and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And we're still here.
Barely.
Several weeks into this horror show.
It only feels like a century.
Well, we had a good weekend. We had a big solidarity rally at the Stonewall, where the LGBT community and our allies came out forcefully to condemn the Trump Muslim travel ban.
And since that is the story at the top of the news this week, we have invited a very special guest in, Micheal Ighodaro, a Nigerian refugee with Outright International, who will tell us what he and his organization are doing to fight the ban and those affected by it, particularly LGBT refugees.
We also challenge the notion that Trump relatives and aides, Jared and Ivanka Kushner, are doing anything to protect LGBT rights as the administration's religious freedom order still looms over us.
And the nightmare continues as Betsy DeVos becomes education secretary and probably Jeff Sessions attorney general by the time you see
right.
And a long list of other horrors
Not
to
if Coretta
come.
Scott King has anything to do with it. We'll tell you more about Judge Neil Gorsuch in relationship to LGBT issues.
Transgender student Gavin Grimm will get his day before the Supreme Court arguing for his right for his gender to be respected in his Virginia school.
And there is a lot of anti-LGBT legislation that is moving through several state legislatures, and we're going to tell you how to keep up with that and do something about it in your state.
One piece of good news from one state there.
Yes, and I think it was really good news what happened this past weekend, where actually our council member, Corey Johnson, Out Gay, and others, 60 groups and organizations and things and individuals and lots of politicians organized this big solidarity rally against the Trump ban. And this is kind of, we have a picture of the scene down there at Sheridan's, excuse me, at the Stonewall National Monument, which is what it is now.
It was a huge crowd.
It was packed in all directions, and it was freezing. And yet people...
That's why I didn't stay through the whole thing.
Well, people hung in there for 3 hours. The speeches could have been a little shorter, but it was so moving because I think this is the first time that the LGBT community has had a Stonewall rally about an issue other than just LGBT rights.
Like marriage or violence or whatever.
We've always gathered in Sheridan Square whenever the community has felt assaulted. Now, of course, refugees, asylum seekers, all those people are part of our community and are LGBT, and that was
and this was like one episode in the ongoing series of mass rallies that the entire population is turning out for.
But this was the one in New York, and there was one at Mar-a-Lago and all over the country.
And there were some very interesting speakers. We have some pictures of those.
Well, there's a picture of Corey with now Chuck Schumer, who's the minority leader of the Senate, came down for this and promises that we're going to stop Betsy DeVos. That didn't work out. And that we're going to stop Gorsuch. But he also was met with some boos in the crowd as well. And I asked him before he went on, I said, how are you feeling about all the demonstrations at your house? And he said, it's good. It's good energy. Well, he said, I can take a few brickbats.
Yeah, Chuck is making a big effort to show up everywhere, but he's not figured out a strategy to really be effective yet. He's got some catching up to do.
He does. Another person who showed up was Cynthia Nixon. And Cynthia gave a great speech. She took on the Jared and Ivanka Kushner and how they're fakes and how they're not really protecting us, despite what is written in the New York Times sometimes. You know,
terrible story.
But she also said in her speech, we will go nuts if we try to do this like 24 hours a day. We have to take care of ourselves. This is a marathon. We're in for the long haul here, folks. And she really was talking about people taking care of themselves.
By the way, thank you to Donna Aceto for these pictures. She is a veteran, terrific photographer who covers every LGBT event in New York City and has given us these pictures.
Typical of the crowd was these three young guys. They're about 19 to 22. The guy in the middle has a Mexican mother who was here illegally. The guy on the right is a Canadian immigrant who says, look, I'm protected by my white skin. I want to be out here, standing up for everybody. And again, they ran out of the house without their hats. It was in the 20s, by the way. But I couldn't believe how people hung in there at this rally.
Yes, I agree. And as I say, I didn't.
So I felt, I
was there for a while.
Well, I was also reporting for the Gay City News and all.
I also saw that the crowd was so huge.
Yes.
Really.
Yes.
I think the biggest crowd I've ever seen in that area.
Ever. Except for the Stonewall riots.
Maybe. I don't know.
Rebellion, I'm supposed to say. All right.
At any rate, we have a guest, a very special guest, Micheal Ighodaro, who is a refugee from Nigeria, came here in 2012, was beaten up in your home country, had your wait a minute, your ribs and hand broken. Yeah. And luckily, you'd been to the International AIDS Conference and you had a multi-entry visa, which allowed you to come back into the United States, and so you were able to get in. Luckily, it's not 5 years later, and you're trying to get in now.
And now you're a board member of Outright Action International, which, for those of you who have followed this over the years, used to be EagleHeart, the International Gay and Lesbian Human Rights Commission, now Outright Action International. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you. And you work for AVAC, which advocates for prevention, PrEP, vaccines, all sorts of AIDS issues around the world.
Yes.
And you did AIDS work in Africa before this. But tell us about your journey.
Thank you for having me. This is a great show, and thank you for having me here again. I'm really privileged to be here. It's been a hard week, I must confess. It's been ups and downs, and I'm just really glad to be here to speak to this issue. And I think my journey is a journey that everyone, most people around the world who are not privileged to be in a country like this, that can relate to. And when I share my stories, people can check it online. I try to take myself out of it. Because anytime I travel around the world, I see young people who are gay, who are lesbians, who are transgender, who are intersex people, who are not able to leave their countries the way I was able to live, who have had to face the trauma, the stigmatization, the hardship that comes with being gay in a country where you are not allowed to be who you are.
Well, the Trump administration is now trying to tell us that they've imposed this ban, and they want to up the vetting and the restrictions for our safety, and that it's really no big deal for the people they're keeping out. Can you give us a perspective on how that applies to, say, LGBT people around the world?
I mean, safety is important, and I think everyone deserves the right to secure its own borders. But I feel like it's also important for us to look beyond just our backyards, and to look beyond what happens in our country, to look beyond. America is a great country, and I respect the country for giving me the opportunity to come here, to live my life, and to be able to be free. But I also feel like, there are people who are just like me, who are in Iraq, who are in Iran, who are in Afghanistan, who are in Tunisia, who are in Cameroon. Being who they are, it's not allowable there. They can't live their lives there. And sometimes when they come in a situation like this, where they want to seek asylum or come as a refugee, they are not allowed to come in with this immigration ban. And I feel like it's a step back from the U.S. Before now, the U.S. is seen as a land of the free and land of the hope, where you feel like if your rights are taken away, come to America. If you're disprivileged, come to America. If you need a home, come to America. Now people are going to look like, well, those are not there anymore. But I feel like, even with this law, even with this ban, there are still good people in America. And I believe that America is a place that has provided me the home, given me the life that I have right now, not just me, for a lot of my friends who have moved here. And I feel like, this too would pass. No matter what, and that's why I'm very proud to be a board member of Outright International and the work that they do. Outright International is an organization whereby, I remember when I first had to leave my country, and the first people I called was Outright. And Jessica, who is the director of the organization, it was like midnight, like 2 a.m. in American time, and she had to pick the call to try to fix how was possible for me to leave my country at that time so I can be safe. So the same thing happens all over the world where people call outright to ask for how can they live their lives, how can they be safe. We don't provide direct services, but we do advocate for inclusion. We do advocate at the UN level and the government level, push government to make it their laws are being inclusive, and that's why we are. It's a bit saddened that we don't have that capacity anymore within the White House. But for now, we can go to the White House and call anyone in the White House and ask Mr. Obama, former president, who I respect a lot, and he's right there for us. And now, globally, we don't have that pillar to lie on anymore.
You don't only respect the president, but Obama, but he respected you. He made you a champion of change, and you met him at the White House.
Yeah, it's one of those times where you are. I look at my life and like, wow, I can't believe those moments, and it happened, and I'm really privileged to have received that award from Mr. President, and being a champion of change for refugees, and because of the work that I've done, advocating for refugees' rights, and not just for refugees' rights, but the rights of everyone, and again, going to the White House to receive the award was one of the time in my life where I feel like I wouldn't have believed that I would have been that time, looking at where I was when I was attacked back home, maybe I would have been dead by now. Or looking at my life whereby I left my parents when I was 17 to the street. I lived in the street for like 10 years. What would have happened to me then? And coming 5 years later, or 15 years later, receiving an award at the White House was just a clear contrast of what I feel about my life before.
You just came here to New York, with a bag and virtually no money and no job. And what was that like for you? One of my godfather said these things like, it takes a village. It takes a village of people And I remember when I came to the U.S. the first time for the AIDS conference in D.C., and I came as an advocate to talk about the work that I was doing around providing HIV prevention services and treatment services for people who are living with HIV, especially gay men living with HIV in Nigeria. And then, what happened. The Washington Post article came out, and when I went back home, it became a problem for me. I couldn't live back home, and I had to come back. I came to the U.S. with my one bag, with just one friend. The friend is Kent Kendera. He used to work for AMFA, the Foundation for AIDS, American Foundation for AIDS, and he offered me a space to live. And then from there, I got to know about Housing Works.
Yes.
Through Charles King, and they offered
That's an AIDS housing agency, yes.
Yes, they offered me a space, and they gave me a opportunity to live my life. And not just me, but for 40 other LGBT advocates around the world who have moved to New York City to find a home. People from Russia, people from Nigeria, people from Ghana, people from Sierra Leone, all over Africa who are gay, who couldn't live their lives back in Africa. I'm now here in New York City, where we now find home, and it's such a privilege to be here with you guys, because I feel like I'm privileged, but there are a lot of people who are not privileged. Every day I have friends who are back in Nigeria, who are back in Ghana, who are back in South Africa, and when I travel internationally, I meet people who only hope to see a better life, who only hope to see a better, more than just their parents' home. Because sometimes their parents force them to live the life that they want to live in, and they just hope to leave their parents, not just their country, but just their parents' house. That's the first step you want to take, and before you even think about leaving your country,
But how is America being viewed by these same folks now? I'm hearing about people who are here, immigrants here, who were actually walking up to Canada to get out of here now.
One thing we cannot take away from America is that America is a great country. That has offered us hope and opportunity and the life that we have right now. And I believe a lot of us are genuinely scared of not knowing what tomorrow holds. And a lot of my friends who live here now see America, well, we don't know what's going to happen next year or tomorrow, for instance. But we do know we have allies, important allies, even though we don't have Obama at the White House anymore, but we do know that people, the relationship we've built, they're going to remain. That we know people are going to have our backs regardless of what happens. So people have genuine fear and resistance about, but what's going to happen, we don't know. But, but what we do know is that we have allies, we have friends who we are hopeful for, that they will stand by us when the time comes for them to do that.
Can you talk a little more about what daily life is like for LGBT people around the world who are living in areas where they are oppressed and abused?
I mean, for Iraq and Syria, for instance, where they have laws, sometimes even death sentences for gay people, and then those are just laws that the government has passed. And then you have ISIS also, who are targeting gay people. So these people face multiple attacks from religious leaders, from ISIS, from the government. So, and then some people are not even able to live their lives as human beings, for instance. Not to talk about living your life as a gay man or as a transgender woman. So you can imagine how that is. And then you're faced with tremendous poverty that comes with, living in a country where there are wars every day. Right. And then you can't even, I think, sometimes people, I was speaking to a lady from Syria. She's a student of mine at the new school. And before she moved here, she was telling me that, she forgot she was lesbian at some point.
But of course,
yeah, because of the situation, she forgot
just
she was
living
lesbian.
her life.
She was just
so
trying
impossible.
to go out to leave. She forgot she was lesbian.
but of course, the one thing Trump, stood up for during the campaign, the one thing on LGBT was, it's horrible what ISIS does. They throw them off buildings, and we're going to stand up against that. The one gay issue he talked about, and yet. Now he's created a situation where those same people who were being persecuted over there, who were getting ready to come over as refugees, and because they're from Iraq or they're from Syria, they can't come now under this, unless, it depends on what happens with the court case, which is in process. But
what he has done is he has sided with those governments. He has, in my view, I think he has sided with ISIS because he's doing the same exact thing that ISIS is trying to do.
Yes.
ISIS is targeting these people based on because of their sexuality, and he's targeting them based on their religion.
Yes.
So there's no different. You might view it in a different way, but you're doing the exact same thing that ISIS is trying to do to target certain people because of their sexuality or because of who they are, and you are targeting them based on their religion or where they come from. So how is that different? You might think about it differently, but it's actually the same thing you're doing. So you are just as aggressive or as, I don't want to use the word, but just as aggressive as a government who is targeting those people. So it's the same thing. And I want I should mention that sometime last year, I think it was last year, Alt-Right brought some advocates from Iran and Syria to come testify at the UN about issues that face them in their countries. And I think that is how things are done. If you would really want to help, hear from the people who have been attacked, who have been faced with these issues. You don't stand behind the mic and just speak what you want to say without actually hear the true stories of people who have been affected. These people are not being affected because they are Muslims. They are being affected because they are gays and they are lesbians and because of sexuality. So you attack them based on their religion, that wouldn't change it. They wouldn't exchange their religion for their sexuality just to make sure they come to the U.S.
Well, he doesn't talk to anyone, and learning is not his strong point.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what you would say to him, but I don't understand what the point of talking to him is.
I mean, I feel at some point, it's this election has taken a lot out of me. I normally don't. I've never been this invested in an election before now, because I felt like this election was a deal breaker for a lot of things, for a lot of us. And the story I will share is that before now. A lot of us in countries whereby we have laws that stigmatize against us, we see American embassies as a safe home, yes. Where whatever happens to you at home, America is a little place you can go to and they welcome you. And right now we are questioning that.
Yes.
We are too.
We are questioning that. Like,
absolutely.
Is that possible anymore? Can we go to the White House?
He told all the ambassadors to leave, and who knows who he's going to put in and how they're going to act, because, in fact, the embassies around the world under the Obama and Clinton and Kerry administrations have been welcoming places and have been advocates for LGBT people around the world.
And I know Americans who are leaving this country because of the fear here.
But regardless of this LGBT, I feel like it's not just targeting LGBT people, but it's targeting women. It's targeting immigrants, like the gag rule, for instance, whereby women are not able to
horrible.
Leave, that's also the same thing. So
I missed
the gag rule.
Oh, right.
The gag rule.
Yeah.
And he does so many horrible things every day that then we lose sight of that.
Yeah, and then it does something that makes you not think about that particular point. I feel like we all should be outraged about the gag rule, about this ban, about every other thing that it does the same way, the equal, because I feel women's rights are human rights. LGBT rights are human rights, Muslims' rights are human rights, so everybody's right are the same thing. So not just one particular person. That's why I feel like that's why the Stonewall protest was really important. But I feel like, it's not only when they come for us that we have to protest, but when they come for our sisters, when they come for our brothers, we have to go out there and protest and say, this is not right, this is wrong, and we stand against it. And that's why if I felt like, Ivanka and the rest, I'm like, you're not standing for me. No, you're standing for your own interest, and not for me.
More on that later.
You're standing for your own interest.
And before we let you go, let me just ask, because another thing we're worried about is that he's going to cut funding for AIDS work around the world, and you're doing that work now. Can you give us a quick summary of what's going on with AIDS work around the world?
So my day job,
yes,
it's I work with AVAC. AVAC is Global Advocacy for HIV Prevention. We do HIV prevention research, and we don't directly do research, but we advocate for research, and prevention research and cure and vaccines, and we work in Africa and globally. And so we hope that this administration recognizes that HIV is a huge issue, and I think they've done that even with the Bush administration, with PEPFAR, with support for PEPFAR, with Congress, and I feel like I hope that do not change, and that's one thing that we are thankful for, and we are hoping that the support continues.
Yeah, but the rumor is that it's not going to. Let me leave you with that.
I have no comments for that. But I'm just going to say, like, we're going to continue to hope that the work, that science is science and not minds, and people don't take it as something that is not true. That HIV is real. Like, there are people who are still dying of HIV in countries whereby it's not America. It's even the U.S. people die of HIV. So I think we take it seriously, and we think that this is a serious issue, and we need to advocate for it. And again, I thank the Congress and the PEPFAR and the Bush administration, for instance, and what they've done. They're going to fund PEPFAR. It's really, really important that those organizations, and through Global Fund also, that those organizations stay alive.
Well, we appreciate all you're doing on AIDS. We appreciate what you're doing with Outright Action International. And if you want to learn more about Outright Action International, go to their website, outrightinternational.org, and you can learn about Michael and about the group.
Thank
you very much.
We really appreciate your being here.
Good luck to you and everybody, and thank you for coming in.
And keep in touch.
Of course.
Okay. All right, so we're going to move on to other news now. Now that we're all worked up. More sins from the Trump administration. Well, let's finish off this.
Well, I'm also encouraged that 20 rabbis got arrested at Trump Tower protesting him, including Rabbi Sharon Kleinbaum from Congregation Beth Simchat Torah, the gay and lesbian synagogue.
Yes, we're very happy about that.
Yes.
But we don't buy this stuff about Ivanka and Jared canceling bad things for LGBT people from the Trump administration.
Well, I think that, and I'll just say it, Maggie Haberman of the Times, who wrote that story.
Terrible.
She tried to write a story during the campaign saying he's the most pro-gay of all the Republicans who's ever been. And it's just nonsense. Look at the people that he has put into place to run the government. These are some of the worst bigots that have ever been in administration, probably since the days of Andrew Jackson.
Betsy DeVos is going to destroy all LGBT non-discrimination rules in the education system. Jeff Sessions is not going to enforce any civil rights laws, including ours.
And this executive order that they apparently, first of all, that they let the Obama executive order stand. They're, as we said on last week's show, they're removing the enforcement mechanism from it in the Department of Labor, so it's not going to do any good. And this religious freedom order, Sean Spicer says, oh yeah, we're looking at that. We're looking at how we're going to balance those things so that, people's religion can be respected. They're going to screw us on this, and they're going to do bills against us, and the Kushners aren't going to protect us from anything, despite the fact that his grandmother, Jared Kushner's grandmother, is a Holocaust survivor. They couldn't even get Jews into the Holocaust Remembrance Day proclamation.
I was just going to quote that. But the rumor is that they may have delayed getting rid of the non-discrimination laws because Gorsuch is this week's, placating thing to the right wing. So they time these out. So They get applause from the right wing right now with Gorsuch, so they don't need to do the anti-LGBT stuff at the moment. They can save that for a month down the road when they need another injection to the right wing.
I mean, the press has reached out to the Family Research Council and all those other right-wing groups and saying, how are you feeling about all this? And they say, we're okay, things are going along okay.
Because
they're
know,
confident that it's going to happen.
And let's talk about this, Trump's favorite thing, which is I'm going to get rid of the Johnson Amendment.
Yes.
The Johnson Amendment was passed, proposed and passed by President Lyndon Johnson because he wanted to prevent, I guess, right-wing preachers in Texas from preaching against him when he was running for Congress or Senate.
If you're tax exempt, whether you're a nonprofit or you're a church or a synagogue or whatever, you are not supposed to engage in partisan political activity. Now, we all know that, a lot of preachers have the politicians into their churches. Many of them issue voter guides.
Left and right.
Many of them issue voter guides and say, here's how they stand on our issues. But you're not supposed to do direct political work. And you're prevented from doing that by the Johnson Amendment. And he wants to take the gloves off all that. So then the rich people are going to be able to pour all their money into these churches to run
tax exempt.
Exactly.
It'll all be tax deductible. All the Koch brothers' money.
That means it's your money.
Hundreds of millions of dollars will go through the right-wing churches. They'll all get a tax deduction for these contributions to the churches. And the churches will then be allowed to spend this money on political campaigns. And do you think most of that money will be coming from the right wing or the left wing?
But aren't you encouraged by what Mike Pence said about how pro-gay that Trump is and that he was the first Republican candidate? Of course not. And Pence is, Pence was stopped from doing some of his religious freedom stuff by this all-out campaign, but he never codified gay rights in Indiana. We don't have LGBT rights protections in Indiana as a state.
It was shocking to me, actually, that Pence would sit there and claim that he was pro-LGBT and there was no room for discrimination in this administration.
He's always talked like that, even when he was...
All these guys, they're very slick.
They don't do anything for us. They work against us, and then they say, we love everybody.
Here's my new favorite rumor, that Trump, there's evidently a list of domestic terrorists, a watch list. Trump wants the white supremacists off that list. Only the Islamists are going to be on the domestic terrorism list.
Well, the other theme you may be hearing coming from the administration is we want people in here who love our country, who respect our values. And you've even heard Sean Spicer say things like, regardless of sexual orientation, this is a right-wing thing. It's happening in France with Marine Le Pen. If you respect us, you have to also respect gay people, even though we don't support gay rights. It's like you have to come in. It's insane.
Again, they're trying to put a little icing on the cake.
Don't fall for it. I know you want to believe something's going good, but it's not.
Well, the more I read and the more I look at this, the more I see not only the hand of Steve Bannon and all this, but his white supremacist hand.
Oh, yes.
And it's important to understand that the ban is less about terrorism than it is about white supremacy.
The browning of America. They're worried about the browning of America.
Exactly. And it's playing to part of their base, which is white supremacist. We hear from viewers sometimes who say, they're not all white supremacists. Well, some of them are. And that is who they're playing to, and that is Bannon's interest. And Flynn's interest, Mike Flynn, the National Security Advisor. And it's helped me figure out the Putin question. Why is Trump so unwilling to criticize Putin?
Because he has pictures of him in that hotel.
No. I mean, that may be part of it, too. But I think it fits into this line. It's about, here's today's interesting little news nugget. Brian Brown, who was the head of the National Organization for Marriage, and
can't raise any money here anymore.
Is now the head of the International Organization for the Family. He's internationalized his thing, as so many of these right-wingers have. He is in Moscow this week to firm up his alliances there. And I think that what Trump is doing in refusing to criticize Putin and talking him up is playing to his base, is playing to this white supremacist base and the extreme right-wing base. That's what it's about. It's about not selling out the people in that corner of the world who see Putin as a hero. It's not that Trump identifies with him as a leader, although that may be part of it. It's really about this particular base that he is playing to.
Well, it's definitely what they're doing. I mean, you know, but of course, you know, everybody would be on his side if the media would just cover terrorist attacks. But I say the media has been covering.
Where do you think they got the list?
No, the biggest terror attack on America is coming from the White House these days. And the media is trying to cover it very, very well. So the media is certainly not falling down on the job on that.
Well, he thinks it's coming from anarchists at Berkeley. He's threatening now to defund Berkeley and other colleges where they have these unfortunate violent attacks, some of them.
Yes, there's some evidence that they may have been agent provocateur. We don't know.
I don't need to get too paranoid about this. But I do want to...
It plays into his hands.
Yeah, and, you know, the
no
debate...
violence, yet.
Look, there is debate about free speech and whether these guys should be allowed to talk, and generally we're certainly in favor of full free speech, the fuller the better.
We're not going to have Milo on the show, though.
We're not, and I want to point out something about Milo. Milo is not a...
Yiannopoulos, Milo Yiannopoulos, this homosexual who doesn't want to be one, who might want to try conversion therapy.
Look, Milo is the agent provocateur. Milo reminds me of my father.
Well, that's all right. Go ahead.
Because his entire desire in life is to bait people. Oh. And my father used to do a lot of that. And I learned that the only way to deal with him when he was in that mode was to get up and walk away. Because, and I did, repeatedly. Because his whole joy in life was to upset people by baiting them.
I know people like this.
And that is what Milo is. He doesn't have a coherent ideological approach to life. He's not defending a particular philosophy.
He just likes to pick at scabs.
He likes to bait people and upset them. And so when you talk about free speech and all of this, it's really irrelevant to the fact that Milo's whole goal is to upset people. And he will say anything to do that. Right. So I am...
Don't take the bait is the point.
Yeah, but, you know, there are people who have bought into his line. So if
Simon and Schuster.
Yeah. If you ignore him, you know, then people just continue to flock to him.
People laughed at Hitler.
Look, I walked away from my father. I certainly would like people to walk away from Milo, but please just understand that he is, you know, bait him in return, laugh at him.
Who was that? Who was that awful comedian? That guy in the '80s? You know, who was? Come on.
Yes, I know who you mean.
We're not going to come up with it because we're elderly.
We'll come up with it at 3 a.m.
And we'll tell you.
Yeah.
All right.
But speaking of comedians, I'm just going to throw in a moment of mourning for Professor Irwin Corey, dead at 102, a great political activist.
Lefty.
Great lefty, and, you know, did nonsense stuff.
Very
that
funny.
Really,
he pretended to be the befuddled professor and sound erudite, but it was always a comedy routine. He was wonderful. He was on all the talk shows.
In World War II, he's enlisting in the army, and at some point they say to him, "Are you a homosexual?" And he says, "None of your business." And he's thrown out.
Is that all you had to do?
That's it.
This is World War II.
All you had to say was,
this was World
War II. None of your business.
If you tried that in Vietnam, they put you in. You could say you were a homosexual in World War II, in Vietnam, and they wouldn't let you out. Perry Watkins.
Yeah. Well, they tried to get rid of him after the war. Yeah. Anyway.
Right. Back to the administration.
Yeah.
Betsy DeVos was confirmed. This is a horror. GLSEN, the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network, you know, notes that she refused to commit to ensuring federal level protections are maintained for all youth, regardless of sexual orientation.
She's certainly going to wipe out the
identity.
guidelines for respectful treatment of transgender students. Wait a minute. I can't promise you that. I don't know that for a fact. That's just a prediction, a guess on my part.
It just shows a Republican contempt for public education.
Yes. Well, they would say we have contempt for the success of students.
So what they're going to do...
Or as they say on Morning Joe, it's all the teachers' unions.
So what they're going to do now, she's going to do, is divert federal money from public schools to private and religious schools. More and more money for them. So you'll be paying for it.
Religious schools, which will discriminate against LGBT students.
Right, they'll have the freedom to do that.
I am happy to see that people all over the country are continuing to flood phone lines of their representatives and senators, show up at their offices, chase them away from their constituent meetings by overwhelming them. All of that is great. Please keep it up. The senators and congressmen who appear on TV keep saying the thing that gets to us and our people is the phone calls.
They're becoming afraid of us.
Oh, God, they're running away.
Well, we're trying to make people afraid of Judge Neil Gorsuch, the nominee for the Supreme Court from Trump. The Human Rights Campaign has a new report out. If you want to read the whole thing, go to hrc.org, and you can read all about their report on his LGBT record, which is, I mean, it's not very specific, but when you get to things like his decisions in the Hobby Lobby case and religious freedom cases, you get the picture. Now, he had a gay aide, apparently, who said, oh, he doesn't have a homophobic bone in his body. And apparently he goes to an Episcopalian, he was raised Catholic, but he goes to an Episcopalian parish in Boulder, which is very pro-gay, has a woman minister who does same-sex weddings. And
there's nothing right-wing in Boulder.
But that doesn't mean that it's going to be terrible for us when states come back to the Supreme Court, when it's fully conservative, and fully right-wing, not conservative, and say, we want to enforce our law against same-sex marriage.
Well, here's my nugget of news on Gorsuch this week. There was talk of the fact that when he was at Columbia, he had objected to the fact that the Marines were barred from recruiting there. And he wrote an eloquent defense of the free speech of the government to be able to come and recruit on campus. And everybody said, oh, what a good guy. Well, the reason the Marines were barred from recruiting on campus was because they were homophobic and would not accept LGBTQ recruits, and that's why Columbia and many, many, many other campuses borrowed them from recruiting, because the colleges had non-discrimination rules. And so they said, if you are an organization that discriminates in your recruiting, we're not going to let you recruit on campus.
There's a big recruiting booth in Times Square, and it used to be the focus of anti-war protests and others, but when they renovated it, or rather when the city extended the lease, they gave them the land right in the middle of Times Square, we had a huge protest about that. Anyway, all right. Now, we have a picture of him in high school. Now, one of the things that came out about him, where he's reading up from liberalism, and then one of the
William Buckley.
One of the things that came out is that in his yearbook, he listed one of his clubs as the Fascism Forever Club.
Joke.
It was a joke, but that's a hell of a joke to put in your yearbook for all time, and I don't think it's funny. Given, we're not. Well, of course, now we're coming back into a fascist era in this country.
Maybe that's what got him nominated. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's a hell of an attitude. It's a hell of a word to use in the, not that far.
Again, I don't think we're going to defeat him. I think he's not only going to get the 52 Republicans, I think he will get some Democrats too.
Well, some Democrats. The question is whether the Democrats will filibuster, and then whether the Republicans will try to overcome that by getting rid of the filibuster.
Well, here's
for these
the other
nominations.
question. Trump has started inviting moderate Democrats from red states into the White House to talk to them about Gorsuch, because he wants to get a 60-member vote without having to invoke the
nuclear option.
Thank you. But my question is, all right, so those people go in and they talk to Trump. What should they ask Trump for in exchange for those votes? And I think they better have an agenda that gets us something substantial. I fear they won't.
Don't waste your opportunity. Frank Rich wrote a great article this week where he said, you know, if the Democrats don't just fully obstruct at this point, they might as well just go out of business.
Well, they
don't have any power now.
A lot of pressure on them not to do that. There's a lot of pressure on them from news media, commentators, whatever, to say, hey, you know, you can't just go up there and do nothing but obstruct. You have to work with them.
That's the Republican agenda.
I agree.
That's our game.
I agree.
All right.
All right. Well, Congress is back, and the LGBT Equality Caucus, which is members of Congress who sign on to support our issues, now has 102 members, which is good.
Up from 53 in the beginning of the 114th Congress.
Well, they had
But you need 218 votes in the House to pass anything.
Well, they'd gone down to 53 from 103 because they imposed a $400 annual dues payment. But evidently we've gotten over that a little, and now we're back up to 102.
Okay.
Yeah. Mostly Democrats, but there are a couple of Republicans.
By the way,
I
forgot to mention that Steve Bannon has been working with the right wing of the right wing in the Vatican now, including Raymond Burke, that cardinal, to go against Pope Francis, who we don't think is liberal.
Still enjoying the young Pope, though.
But
2 more hours to go.
And now that Melissa McCarthy was such a hit as Sean Spicer, the press secretary, Rosie O'Donnell wants to play Steve Bannon
I think
on
that'd
Saturday
be great.
Night Live. That would be great.
The Melissa McCarthy thing was just so brilliant.
Yes.
But what upsets them? That he was being played by a woman. You haven't read this?
It's mean.
No, it's, it's feminizing.
Melissa McCarthy is a brilliant comedian, and she did a fantastic job.
Yes.
It was very hard to tell the difference.
It took a second. You had to hear her voice before you could figure out who it was.
Because he's a bit of a caricature himself.
But of course, overlooked somewhat on that Saturday Night Live episode last week was host Kristen Stewart, who was getting more and more attractive all the time. Did a little anti-Trump thing at the beginning of the show, at her intro to the show. I won't go through the whole thing, except that she told the whole history of how he spent months tweeting against her when she broke up with Robert Pattinson, and he kept putting out tweets saying, "Don't take her back, Robert. She'll just keep cheating on you." This is
Well,
what our
didn't she
president
rather come out definitively in this?
And she said, in this intro on Saturday Night Live, and now you're really going to hate me because I am so gay. And she's dating a very attractive model.
We're down to our last 15 minutes, so we better rush through some stories, especially since the state legislatures are being overrun with anti-LGBT bills. And we don't want you to be overwhelmed about it. If you want to find out what's going on in your locality, go to aclu.org, and they've got a special webpage devoted to pro-gay, pro-LGBT legislation and anti-LGBT legislation.
Can I start with the good news?
All right. Yeah, sure.
South Dakota. The anti-trans student bathroom bill has been withdrawn. This is great news, and this is essentially the same bill that the Republican governor vetoed last year.
But what about the bill that would allow any adoption or foster care agency to reject you based on religious freedom?
I'm sure we'll get rid of that, too.
You think so?
I don't know.
Well, this will be a test to see what's going to happen with these religious freedoms things.
Yes.
I mean, the Tennessee Senate has advanced an anti-LGBT proposal promoting taxpayer-funded discrimination.
And
similarly.
so has the Virginia House of Delegates, although Governor Terry McAuliffe has promised to veto that bill.
North Carolina is still losing a tremendous amount of business. They stand to lose 133 NCAA championship events, $250 million if HB2 is not repealed. So the sports associations and Coach Roy Williams of the men's basketball team at the University of North Carolina, they're all appealing and saying, stop the madness here.
Well, one good piece of news from North Carolina.
Isn't basketball more important than bigotry?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But now you know. If North Carolina does not think that basketball is more important than bigotry,
we're in trouble. We are in trouble.
But the new governor, Roy Cooper, has filled an open house seat by appointing an out lesbian attorney, Deborah Butler.
We have a picture of her.
Yes. Can we show that picture of Deb Butler?
Yeah.
The newest member of the, there she is, the North Carolina House. Congratulations to you, and thank you to Roy Cooper.
And in South Carolina, they have the first openly LGBTQ legislator in the state, Representative Jason Elliott, and he represents a conservative part of the state. He's a Republican lawmaker who did not think his sexual orientation was an issue during the campaign.
Gavin Grimm has gotten a date at the Supreme Court. March 28th, there will be oral arguments on his case asking for respect and equal bathroom access in his Virginia high school. Now, he has won at the lower court level, the federal appeals court. So if the Supreme Court splits 4-4, he ends up winning. It won't be a decision that applies nationally, but it will be...
Maybe Justice Kennedy will go with us and make right-wing heads explode.
That would be fantastic, and then it would be an important national decision.
Arkansas has passed a bill that says a rapist can make a woman bear his child. Now, this is for marital rape, but the husband always has a say over whether she's allowed to have an abortion.
It's a very feudal society.
Horrible.
Okay, we'll do horrible. In New York City and Jamaica, Queens, a man was gay bashed, assaulted for wearing tight pants. He got into an argument with his assailant and got beaten.
Okay.
This is cute. The former Out Hotel on West 42nd Street is being turned into a Playboy Club.
With modified costumes on the women. But it sounds pretty retro.
Well, I don't know how modified that'll be.
Well, that's what they say.
I saw a Gender Revolution on National Geographic, the Katie Couric special. That was pretty good. I didn't think it was perfect, and I thought the intersex section, which led it off, was a little hurried and confused, but it got better as it went along, and it was certainly a valuable contribution. It's getting pretty unanimous applause.
And let's put up the picture of Joey Maldonado, who was a transgender Cub Scout. He had his first meeting this past week as a member of PAC 20 in Essex County. There he is,
Yay,
cute as a button. Congratulations.
And congratulations to Reverend Brian Ellison, a Baptist minister in Detroit. He's the brother of Keith Ellison.
Member of Congress who was up for the head of the Democratic National Committee.
You're right, and Muslim. But his Baptist brother, Brian, married 2 women in his church in November, and there's quite a revolt in the congregation. People are leaving.
He said, one woman had a petition and said, if you don't do it again, I'll stay in the church. And he said, I'm going to do it again. I'm not going to allow our LGBT members to live in the shadows of our church.
Yep.
This is in Detroit.
Yep.
Vermont has the most gay people in the country, according to people who self-identify, up 5.3%, although District of Columbia is 8.6%.
South Dakota has the least, 2.0.
Yeah.
Gallup poll. Interesting. Yes, Gallup poll.
All right. And the perils of Grindr. We have a picture of this guy. He's suing Grindr because they won't. He thinks it's an ex-boyfriend, but somebody's putting up a phony profile of him, and hundreds of people are showing up at his place of work and his home to have sex with him because the phony person has agreed to do this. So it happened on Scruff, and they fixed it. Grindr hasn't fixed it. He's suing him.
All right, are we ready for international news? In Australia, new hope for marriage equality. You may remember that the Liberal, which is really sort of right-wing government, wanted there to be a national vote, a plebiscite on marriage equality.
That was stopped.
Our side said, that's no good. We want Parliament to do it. But the Liberal, the Turnbull, the Prime Minister, who you may remember from his rude phone call from Donald Trump, is sticking to, I want a plebiscite, even though I support marriage equality, because my right-wing supporters, which put me in office in a coalition, want that.
Right.
But now, some members of his Liberal Party, backbench, rogue MPs, are saying, the hell with this.
We
We're
want a
tired of
free
this.
vote.
We want a free vote on marriage equality in the parliament.
Which will pass.
We're going to push that. We're bucking the leadership.
The gay activist there, Rodney Kroom, says keep the pressure up, which is exactly what we have to do everywhere in the world if we're going to get anything.
Yep.
In the United Kingdom, the Speaker of the British House of Commons, John Bercow, said Donald Trump's not welcome here, and he has a say in this. He's getting a lot of heat for saying this, but he doesn't want him speaking in the Parliament.
Neither do we, although we would be entertained by that.
Okay.
In Germany, a couple of rough stories from Tunisian gay men trying to emigrate to Germany. One was beaten by the police in Tunisia, applied for asylum in Germany, was turned down. The immigration judges said, well, you should have gone to other police to complain. You can't apply for asylum just because some police beat you up. So activists in Germany got bent out of shape, publicized the story. He appealed. He got asylum. But another Tunisian gay man was beaten by his family. He was rejected for asylum on the grounds that he should be staying in Tunisia and staying closeted.
I know, that's what they tell you to do.
We hear this story over and over again. He has appealed, but no decision on him
I remember working at NBC in 1977, and the guy who was sitting at the head of the desk, he said, well, was a gay story? He says, why would anybody have to tell anybody they were gay? Like,
excuse me. When people used to say that, I'd say, is that a wedding ring on your finger?
And who's the picture of that person on your desk?
Exactly.
All right. And in a little town in Hungary, not far from where my people are from, in Romania, there's a mayor there. This would be very, Steve Bannon and Donald Trump would be very happy here. He says gays and Muslims are not welcome. We were against multiculturalism. You'll be happier in your own places. But come here if you're white and not gay.
All right, AIDS news. A new study in Baltimore that the most at-risk youth, young men of color who are men who have sex with men, are the least likely to be tested for HIV.
Yep.
In part because the youth organizations they access are not offering testing, are not referring for testing. And the study shows that, in fact, they ought to be doing a lot more of that and making testing more available. We say very glibly to people, get tested, get treatment, whatever. But we haven't looked lately, I think, at the difficulties of actually accessing testing.
Right.
It's not as easy as we portray it. All right.
Entertainment news?
Yes, because after all of this ranting, well,
how about that Lady Gaga?
That's how I was going to segue. Okay. I thought she was great.
She's quite energetic. She's got a lot of spunk.
And you hate spunk?
No, I thought no. She was. Well, I watched.
I thought that was going to be a Mary Tyler Moore reference.
I was expecting something more directly political. Now she did because given all that's going on and who she is and how she's been so outspoken. But she did sing "Born That Way," you know.
Well, let's start at the top where she did "God Bless America."
She really did start at the top.
Well, she did the "God Bless America" and "This Land Is Your Land," and I thought that was very political.
We're trying to reclaim the flag.
Well, and I thought it was also done in a sort of ironic tone, or that's how I took it, because there had been so much talk of her being political. I think everyone knows where she stands. So I think it was clear that that had political overtones of defining what liberty really is and what the country is. And then she did Born This Way, and she did it with all the explicit lyrics about certainly about she said lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and she said Muslim, and to get her rhyme, she says Orient, but she put in different religions and nationalities.
And she had quite a multicultural group of backup singers. The
completely.
Hungarian mayor was very upset at this. Had to turn off the set. And he missed that second half, which was so exciting.
You know, in the earlier days when she first did Born That Way, wrote the song and performed it, I remember one particular major performance that was televised where she did not use those explicit LGBT lyrics, and she was criticized for that, and people noticed that she had sort of pulled back a little. So I thought to do it at the Super Bowl and to do it completely forthrightly and overtly and LGBT explicitly was definitely a political statement.
Lady Gaga, you have gotten the Ann Northrop seal of approval, which is not given out lightly.
Please. But I like a lot of her music. I like particularly those hits that she did, so I was happy to hear them. You can sing Bad Romance all day in my town. And what was the gayest thing at the Super Bowl? This is a quiz, which he will not get.
I did have it on. I usually do my taxes while all this is going on, but I don't pay close. But you had to be riveted by the game. But go ahead, tell me.
The cutaway to John Travolta in a box with two men, one of whom seemed a little, you should excuse the expression, light in the loafers.
See, born that way, you mean?
Yes. Yes. I thought that was a very, very interesting moment.
You know, he wasn't sharing this moment with his wife and children?
Not at that moment. I mean, maybe she was there and was out of the box at that moment.
John needs to get with the program and, deal with who he is.
There was also, I see they're now advertising the new ABC series, which is going to start on February 27th, When We Rise. This is the LGBT history series.
Centered mostly around San Francisco, Cleve Jones. It's written by Dustin Lance Black, who wrote the movie Milk. But this is going to be a series.
Won
and it
an
is
Oscar for Milk.
Star-studded.
Yeah, it makes me a little nervous.
Whoopi Goldberg and
celebrity recreations of real history.
I think these celebrities.
Although I love the OJ thing.
They like to think they're pro-gay, and many of them are pro-gay, and they want to be a part of something like that. Look, I remember how many did cameo roles in Randy Schultz's book, and the band played on.
Mm-hmm.
They had little roles in that movie because they wanted to show some solidarity with the community.
Well, it starts February 27th on ABC. It's going to be a series for probably a limited series of, 4, 6, 8
I
hours.
hope they hired some gay people to play gay people. That would be nice.
Well, if you want to see, if you're in New York, and actually this is going to be trotted around the world, but a movie called Political Animals tells the story of 4 lesbian politicians in California: Sheila Kuehl, from the Dobie Gillis Show, Carol Migden, Jackie Goldberg, and one other whose name is escaping me at the moment. I've seen it. It's really good. It's playing Friday night at Barnard here in New York at 6 p.m. at 304 Barnard Hall in the Held Auditorium as part of the Athena Film Festival. I recommend it. I thought it was great, and we may pursue showing that. And Sunday night is the Grammys, which is always entertaining for everyone but you.
And the BAFTAs.
Okay.
The British Film
I'll
Awards.
watch one and record one, or go back and forth, or something. All right. Well, thank you to Micheal Ighodaro for joining us from Outright Action International.
Very good to have him, and he's doing courageous work, and we all need to support each other around the world and stand up for what America really is about, which is welcoming people.
And we do believe in taking a rest and taking care of yourself, but please stay active and out in the streets and calling your representatives.
And find out what's going on in your state by going to aclu.org.
We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.